This is a brief talk about C.W. Brown, an artist and miner, local artist and miner, who hailed originally from Biddulph Moor. And here is a drawing that you can see of Malcop Castle, which he did in 1958. Nowadays, you may not associate Congleton with mining, but you can see here from the 1901 census that there was quite a lot of people, men who were employed in the mines and who lived in Congleton. Sometimes people from Biddulph and Congleton intermarried, and maybe the man came to live in Congleton and travelled to the mines which were in the North Staffordshire coalfield. Here's a map showing activity during the 19th century in our vicinity at Malcop and also Biddulph, showing coal mining, probably deep mines, and also adit mines, which are called footrulls in this area, but also quarrying as well, such as the Asprey limestone quarry. So in blue, you can see the tramway that used to go from Stonetrough Quarry all the way down into Congleton. And then the green line is Stonetrough down to the Macclesfield Canal, going through the tunnel that used to go through Malcop. And here's a map showing the situation as it was in 1947, when all the coal mines were nationalised. This is a map of the North Staffordshire coalfield from Victoria, better known as Black Bull, in the north, all the way down to Hemheath and Florence and Foxfield, right down in the south of the area. Obviously, all of these mines have disappeared now, and only the footrell at Apedale, together with Chatley Whitfield, still exist. Chatley Whitfield is a scheduled ancient monument and also has various listed buildings. So it was to Victoria, Black Bull, and Whitfield that miners in Congleton used to travel, either via the Biddulph Valley Railway, or else buses were put on specially for the colliers to get to work of a morning or an afternoon or a night, because obviously they worked shifts and the mines were going 24 hours a day. This is a view of the Chatley Whitfield colliery, taken from what was the slag heap when it was a working mine, but which is now the viewpoint in the country park. You can see the steam in the background coming from the low pressure steam accumulators, which are just beyond the Hesketh building, and they were used to drive generators housed in the Hesketh. There are 4 shafts you can see there, starting from the right hand side. There's the Hesketh, then go along the line to the Platt, the Institute, and right on the left hand side is the Winstanley, built to a German design just before the First World War. In the middle is the iconic chimney, and all these buildings more or less still exist today, albeit in a very dilapidated state. In the background is the Pithead Baths, dating from the 1930s, which was a great step forward with regard to worker welfare. And in the middle is the boiler house, where there's a bank of 10 Lancashire steam boilers. Beyond that is the lamp house. To the left of the Pithead Baths is the offices and the laboratories. In fact, it was an entire village or a small town. There were lots of workers who worked on the surface, in addition to all the colliers who worked underground. The Pithead Baths catered for showers and lockers, a dirty locker and a clean locker for everyone, for several thousand men altogether. So here are a couple of photographs of C.W. Brown, Charles William Brown himself. He was born in 1882 in Biddulph Moor. He died in 1961 after a very long career as a miner and also a mine manager, but his main hobby that he thoroughly enjoyed was artist. So the photograph on the left dates from the 1950s. The photograph on the right, where he looks very dapper, he's got his wing collar, is a studio photograph from around the time of the First World War. During his lifetime, C.W. Brown had had a lot of encouragement from the Keeper of Art at the Potteries Museum, and he exhibited in various exhibitions throughout Stoke-on-Trent as well. So when he died in 1961, he left the vast majority of his work to the Potteries Museum and Art Gallery. So in total, there are about 1,500 items that he left to the museum, and that includes both oils and watercolours, pen and ink drawings, pencil drawings as well, sketchbooks, manuscripts, and also photographs of himself and his family too. So very few items are actually in private ownership. They're not being bought or sold on the open market, meaning that he's probably not as well known as he ought to be. One of the people that admired the works of C.W. Brown was Arthur Berry, and in fact he did purchase some of C.W. Brown's paintings, and occasionally some of them do come onto the open market from his estate. Arthur Berry was a renowned North Staffordshire artist who's been compared to Lowry. He was born at Smallthorne and went to school at Biddulph Central School. Later on, he was educated at the Royal College of Art, and he also taught at the Burslem School of Art as well. He was an artist, a playwright, an author and a poet. Some of his plays have been performed at the New Vic. He produced prize-winning short story monologues, which he performed on radio, such as The Lost Pubs of Burslem, and various novels are out there, such as The Little Gold Mine, which is a story all about a chip shop. He wrote an autobiography, which he called The 3 and 7pence Halfpenny Man, and it was called that because his dad said there was absolutely no money in painting, all he'd ever get was 3 and 7pence halfpenny. And this is a quote from A 3 and 7pence Halfpenny Man, which Arthur Berry wrote. I'll give you some time to read it at the end of this little talk, but as you can see, he was astounded by the subject matter of C.W. Brown, although he saw him as a great naive painter. In this context, I would say that naive means self-taught with an unself-consciously developed style. It doesn't mean basic. It doesn't mean unsophisticated. And here is an example of one of the paintings of C.W. Brown. It's called Still Life. It's dated 1935, and as you can see, it's some everyday objects placed on C.W. Brown's tabletop there. The vase, the flowers, the loaf of bread, the knife, his pipe, tobacco pouch, and also Guinness. Here's another quote also from Peter Vigers, who was familiar with the work of C.W. Brown. Peter was a former Keeper of Fine Art at the Potteries Museum Art Gallery. He says, C.W. Brown combines a simple, clear delineation of the forms with a characteristic, strong colouring that makes the yellow centre of flowers shine like suns. Brown often paints as though the earth itself contains a source of light which forces its way out through the grass, bracken, and garden flowers. In the next slide will be an example of paintings that try to emulate what Peter is saying. This painting is called Daffodils. It dates from 1945. Flowers in vases was one of C.W. Brown's favourite subjects. Very colourful flowers, beautifully decorated vases. How different from working in a mine can you get? This painting is called A Beech Grove in Autumn. It's undated. I think you can see that it does emulate the words of Peter Vigers when he spoke about the earth containing a source of light forcing its way out through the grass and the bracken. C.W. Brown was born up by the Wickenstone rocks near to Robin Hill on Biddulph Moor in 1882. His father's ancestors were stonemasons, and his mother's, according to himself, were bargees who worked the canals. That's possibly not correct because investigation of the census records suggests that they might have been itinerant hawkers rather than bargees. But anyway, that's what C.W. Brown believed. His mother's family settled in Lower Withington, and his father became a miner in the local mines around Biddulph Moor. Throughout his life, C.W. Brown retained strong memories of the dialect of Biddulph Moor, which is quite unique. But he moved with his family at a very young age to Miles Green, near Hammer End, which is on the other side of Stoke-on-Trent. And later in life, he lived in the Etruria district of Stoke-on-Trent. But obviously, Biddulph Moor remained in his memory for the whole of his life and was a subject of his paintings into his old age. This painting is called Biddulph Moor North Staffs, and it's dated 1960, which is the year before C.W. Brown died. It's a representation, obviously, not a photographic reproduction of Biddulph Moor, although it has captured the essence. It definitely says Biddulph Moor to me. This one is called Landscape with Bus, dates from 1955. Look closely at the bus. It says PMT, Potteries Motor Traction. Is it Malcop in the background? Is it the Wickenstones in the foreground? Looks to me like a bus chugging along New Street to Biddulph Moor. Just heaved itself up Part Lane from Knipersley Crossroads. Maybe it's carrying miners back home from work. C.W. Brown is still known and remembered by some in the Biddulph Moor community, because as you can see, this was a book about Biddulph Moor called Within Living Memory, which was compiled by Bill Ridgway, and the book cover is listed as a detail from a painting called Under the Hill by Charles William Brown. Canal Barge, 1928. Canal boats are an often depicted subject based on C.W. Brown's perception of his mother's heritage. The canal boat is called Beatrice. His wife was Beatrice Bailey, a Bailey from Audley, not from Biddulph Moor, where the name Bailey is very, very commonplace. In the 1911 census, they had 6 children: May, Violet, Winifred William Rose, and Horatio Stanley. A patriotic family. This is the Trap Inn, which is in Trap Street in Lower Withington, subsequently called the Black Swan. It was abandoned and in disrepair, but brilliantly now it's coming back to life again. and the cottage next door is now part of the pub itself. This photograph, which estimated is to be from about 1890 to 1900, shows C.W. Brown's parents and his maternal grandmother standing outside the front door of the separate family cottage. The Trap Inn, Lower Withington, Cheshire, 1941. This is a place that C.W. Brown must have been very familiar with and which brought back very happy memories of his parents and grandparents. If you look closely, you can see there's a figure in the doorway of the cottage next to the pub, his mother or his grandmother. Self-portrait, 1952. I assume that every aspiring artist needs to do a self-portrait at various times throughout his life. This one is when he was age 70. C.W. Brown was an artist and sometimes a writer. He wrote articles in the Sentinel in the Biddulph vernacular. This is an excerpt from a play he wrote in the Biddulph dialect. It's a shame, but I don't know half a toe crate in Staffordshire. I've just tried to transcribe it. I'm sure we all recognise some of the words. Boozing, that's one of them. Cutst, shart, the nose, wom, to dee, the sell, no good to nobody. Give it a go yourself. My Dear Old Dad, 1931. This is C.W. Brown's father, Frederick Brown. He was not always so dear. He could be strict according to C.W. Brown's writings, and at one stage the family had to split up due to domestic disputes, and the mother and children fled to Bradford in Yorkshire to stay with relatives. Hopefully they made it up by 1931. Fred Brown, he was a miner and later a salesman for Singer sewing machines. He worked in the local mine and he left in the aftermath of an explosion against the orders of the mine manager. He was blacklisted and had to move away from Biddulph. He said he was the last person to emerge alive. That mine disaster could have been the 1881 one at Chatley Whitfield, where 24 men and boys were killed due to an explosion that started as a blacksmith's fire, which was underground, and it got out of control. Mine disaster, 1954. C.W. Brown had been there, observed it in reality. All his pit paintings were from first-hand experience. In 1918, he himself was buried for several hours under a fall of coal. His brother, apparently, was involved in the rescue at the mini-pit disaster in 1918, where 156 men and boys lost their lives, the worst disaster in the North Staffordshire coalfield. In this painting, there's a skeleton in the background. There's a miner in rescue equipment. The bodies have a pinky hue, a sign of carbon monoxide poisoning. Price of Coal, 1952. Another painting depicting the sacrifices of miners and their families. It was an all too familiar event in the coalfields. Getting on for 5,000 fatalities happened in the North Staffordshire coalfield over the centuries. Darby and Damsel, 1949. C.W. Brown's school career was short, even though he was an outstanding pupil, which he put down to fear of the cane. He left school at age 12 to work on a local farm, but ran away to start work at the pit shortly afterwards. But in 1895 there was another colliery disaster with heavy casualties, and boys of his age were banned from pit work. So it was back to the farm labouring, ploughing with heavy horses. This painting depicts his time as a ploughboy, aged about 13 or 14 in 1896, working with heavy horses at Moss House Farm. Darby and Damsel were prize-winning Clydesdale heavy horses. The 1895 mine disaster was at Diglake, where 77 perished due to an inundation of water, which resulted in the flooding of the pit workings. This is Old Rookery Pit, Bignell End, as it was in 1905. Then as now, agricultural labour's pay was low compared to other occupations. When he was old enough, at 14, C.W. Brown moved back to work in the coal mines. His mining career lasted until nationalisation in 1948, over 50 years. His manuscripts, bequeathed to the museum, describe his life in the mines, from the butty system of labour to the growth and strength of trade unions, mine owners, and working conditions. The butty system was where a ganger employed groups of men and contracted on their behalf with the mine owners. According to C.W. Brown, the mine owners' motive was profit at the expense of miners' lives and livelihoods. Working conditions were very poor. Miners' welfare was still a long way off. Pithead baths only appeared in the 1930s. Before that, the miners went home dirty and used a tin bath in front of the fire to get clean. This drawing by C.W. Brown is called Four Belts, Head, Wrightson and Co Limited, Stockton-on-Tees. It's undated. The bulk of Charles William Brown's career was spent in North Staffordshire, but his working life also took him to Somerset and the Wyre Forest. He had a talent for painting and drawing from an early age that he put to good use in preparing engineering drawings for the introduction of machines and ways of working at the mines. He had a range of colliery jobs, from dateler to loader to hewer, shot firer, and also under manager. This is a series of drawings from some sketchbooks that he provided to the museum, depicting ways of working at the mine and the introduction of new modern methods. His talent won several prizes in a magazine called The Science and Art of Mining, so much so that he was eventually banned from entering their competitions. Dateler, by the way, is a day worker, part of the butty gang, today's 0 hours contractor. He passed his mine manager's first class certificate in 1920, with classes at the Stoke-on-Trent Technical College and examinations by the University of Birmingham. He was one of only 6 locally that year to do so. The examination papers, of which there were 6, covered a number of different topics, which are winning and working, the theory and practice of ventilation, which is the paper shown here, and it's the original one, which dates from 1920, with his workings as well. Thirdly, explosions in mines, underground fires and inundations. Then machinery. Fifthly, surveying, levelling and drawing. And finally, a paper in general management and mining legislation. Newbury Colliery, Coleford, Somerset, 1924. C.W. Brown must have been a very proud man when he took up his first mine manager's job at Newbury Colliery, down in Somerset. If you look at the painting, you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, 1924, CWB, manager. That should have an exclamation mark. This painting is called Window or Tile Design, and it dates from 1928. C.W. Brown's paintings range widely in subject matter, from depictions of coal mines in the early 20th century, through local scenes and industry in the potteries, hints of war, holidays in Scotland or Devon, and social gatherings, to flowers in vases and domestic household items or just designs. From now on, we're just going to do a quick tour through some examples of his paintings. This one is Trentham Hall, 1910, although it was actually painted in 1936. It features in a lot of his paintings, and it was a place where he went for recreation and probably also for courting. This one is Station at Night. It's undated. It doesn't look like Stoke. I think there's too many platforms. Maybe it's Crewe. Maybe it's just imagination. The steam trains are powering through, bellowing funnels of smoke. This is called A Dance, and again it's undated. Obviously it's not photographic likenesses of the people who went to enjoy themselves at the dance, but they certainly look characters, definitely ones that you might see up Annelly Duck. This one is called Through My Window, 5 p.m. It dates from 1951. The curtains are obviously twitching, what's happening in the street. This is a detail from the last painting, Through My Window, 5 p.m. C.W. Brown was entirely self-taught, and Arthur Berry said it was all the stronger for that. Some have said that he may have benefited from attending life classes and anatomy drawing, but in my opinion these figures work well, particularly the boys playing football, the man with the walking stick, and especially the courting couple on the doorstep, captured just right. On the left is Sweet Peas, which dates from 1926, and on the right is Narcissi in Vase with Fallen Flower. That dates to 1944. Flowers in vases are a very popular subject, painted throughout C.W. Brown's life, as you can tell by these from 1926 and 1944. The decorative vases enhance the scene. This is Morton Old Hall, which dates from 1950. Part of C.W. Brown's self-teaching was to study perspective, as you can see from the lines which are on this particular drawing. He persevered, he studied art books, he tried to learn how to do it right. This is a poster design for the Josiah Wedgwood Bicentenary, which was in 1930. C.W. Brown entered a competition and won with this particular poster. He entered with the alias Numbskull. Maybe that was well named. If you look at exhibition, it's got no H. This painting is called War Scene, and it dates from 1940. Everyone was affected by the war. C.W. Brown put his feelings down on paper. It's a bombastic scene, an overwhelming array of planes and ships in action against the enemy U-boat menace. And this one is Warships, and again it dates from 1940. A crushing display of British sea power protecting the vital convoys. Mixed Industry, 1936. C.W. Brown captured a vital record of the industrial dynamism and working conditions that was Stoke-on-Trent in the 1930s. Pot banks, gas holders, chimneys, steaming trains belching smoke. Industry and houses, cheek by jowl. Night at Shelton Bar, dating from 1950. The inferno, abyss, fire and brimstone that was the Potteries, especially at night. Colours reflected in windows and in the canal. Those that saw it say it really was like this. Here we have pit bottom scene from 1928. Again, it's coal mining from first-hand experience. Tubs, rails, timbers, pulleys and hooks. Manhandling that was a feature of those times. Perspective drawing, undated, another example of perspective, this time showing the pot bank. This one's got quite a long title. It's called Wedgwood Etruria, Carrying Ware from Oven, Showing Interior of Oven, and it dates from 1949. So are these Saga Makers bottom knockers. Sometimes strikes me that the figures are lookalikes, maybe even automatons, just getting the job done, earning a decent wage, waiting for the end of the shift to get away to the pub, entertainment, and home. Pot paintresses, another undated drawing. Maybe in this one, C.W. Brown recognised the adept and skilled ware designers and decorators as kindred spirits. This is Seaside, dated 1938. Recreation. Is it the beach at New Brighton? Is that Liverpool Pier Head in the background and the Mersey Ferry? You can see box brownie cameras, trousers rolled up ready for paddling, but overall they're wrapped up warm. No bikinis in sight. Wine, Women and Song, dated 1952. Old-time entertainment, the singer belting it out at the piano, bass beer on the table. They're still well wrapped up warm with hats and coats. They're amongst groups of friends enjoying the night out. Gypsy Caravan, dating from 1935. Here C.W. Brown has captured rural scenes which are now very rarely seen or are non-existent. It's a highly decorated caravan, just like a canal narrowboat, the same tradition of wandering communities. They've not got much space, but they're proud of what they have, and they strive to make it look its best. Harvesting, 1944. It's wartime. There are planes in the sky. They're digging for victory. Mechanisation, not horsepower. Making progress, entering the modern world. Snow scene, dated 1939. Here's the village blacksmith with his horseshoes, cart, farm equipment and a roaring forge keeping him warm. War is approaching. Are there aeroplanes or crude, buzzing insects menacing above? It's a tranquil scene, but there may be trouble ahead. Interior with tulips, 1950. Look at the mirror-like shine on that table. That took some elbow grease. Here's Ship in Dock with passengers and captain, dating from 1943. It's a towering ship. Tight crowds just come off. Comings and goings at the busy port. Look at the suitcase. CWB, that's okay, that's what we expect. LSD, that's a bit of a giveaway. Newquay, West Cornwall from 1950. A holiday destination for C.W. Brown and family. Fishermen trudging up the quay side with nets. Women knitting, sitting on the walls. I love the steps. This painting is just called Hens and it dates from 1940, but maybe it should more properly be called Cockerels. Cock's Head is one of the many coal seams in the North Staffordshire coalfield. Some of the others are Bellringer, Bowling Alley, Holly Lane, 10 Feet Hard Mine, Chalky, Brights, and there are many more. They're all named for a reason. Some are more obvious than others. Cock's Head, obviously, has a bright sheen of colours as depicted in this C.W. Brown painting. Don't ride on conveyors. That man did, and is no more. Poor fellow, he's gone. This is a depiction by C.W. Brown of health and safety in the mines, an exhortation. Before the introduction of man riders in the pit, men tried to get to the coalface in safety, but riding conveyors could be precarious and fatal. Crucifixion from 1958. C.W. Brown did some religious paintings later in his life. Was he thinking about his mortality? There are angels in the sky. He was bedridden for the last year of his life, and he died in 1961 from cancer. Night Watchman, which is undated. Here's one last example of C.W. Brown's paintings, although there are many more that are available at the Potteries Museum. It's a cold night. The brazier is burning. There goes the last bus home. Charles William Brown did not see himself as either a primitive nor a naive painter. I'm impressed with the technical expertise of his work in drawings, and there are many such in the collection. He had a detailed first-hand knowledge of how things work or could work, both practically and economically, from long experience and observation during his career in the mines. Those same qualities of experience and observation are important factors in portraying industrial and mining scenes, particularly work underground, as well as everyday life in the potteries and beyond. They illustrate and capture a historic record of what it actually felt like in Stoke-on-Trent in the first half of the 20th century, when the pot banks and mines were in full swing and the city was bustling. The working life of the mining and pottery industries could be rugged and hard, but with excellent camaraderie and a common bond. So in Pot Paintresses, for example, C.W. Brown has portrayed who you must have seen as a group of kindred spirits, where exceptionally skillful women are putting the finishing flourishes to the products that have made the potteries famous throughout the world. Possibly C.W. Brown would have benefited from attending life classes in art, but to my mind the figures in A Dance have character and could be recognised out and about in the streets of Hanley or Burslem as real people with real lives. C.W. Brown's, it seems, hasn't set out to produce portrait likenesses, and his faces are certainly not often joyful or jolly, but he has created distinctive personalities. Everything and anything was potential material for his paintings, from the smallest and least significant of domestic objects, through the joys of the natural world and majestic holiday scenery, to the contrast of the world of work in heavy industry. All must have brightened his life tremendously. He was capable of undertaking minute observation of everything, from a plant to a pulley. He attempted to capture the essential spirit of his subject, and his own interpretation rather than a photographic likeness, which I realise for the artist is what it's all about.